Critical thinking is a process that allows for optimal improvement. It contains 4 steps. Seek information, verify the said information, make a hypothesis, compare results. But why is critical thinking important? There are a lot of Valorant improvement channels out there. Since there are so many channels, some of them give good advice, some of them give bad advice. Eggwick already highlighted the subject of following the wrong advice from poor guys, and he is right. This video that I'm making aims to be a solution to the underlying core issue that's been produced by the said wrong advice, and help you figure out how to create your own system to learn the game more efficiently. Okay, let's get back to the steps and go in depth. The first 2 steps go hand in hand with each other. Seek information. This one is self-explanatory. You need to go and search for advice. There are plenty of ways to do that. You can just use YouTube, you can watch streams or whatever. But the second part is just as important. Verify your source. What do I mean by that? You can just go ahead and watch one video on the subject thinking that the video is the holy grail and will teach you the subject you're trying to learn instantly. Watching only one video while there are like 3 or 4 available means that you had so much more potential information together that you've just ignored. Or maybe you got really unlucky and landed on the worst possible video out of the few available, and you learned the subject completely wrong, and then you have to do a lot of things to break down the potential bad habit created. Statistically speaking, you're much better off watching an entire hour on the same subject rather than spending like 10 to 15 minutes, but then having to spend an entire week, maybe even more, to fix the issues created by the bad advice. You want to watch all the available guides and see what information is consistent. If the information is consistent, most of the time it should be pretty safe. Although you still have to be careful because it could be incomplete information. Valorant is still very young and there are a lot of gaps when it comes to improvement, especially on YouTube. And this is where you might ask a question. If there are so few guides or maybe even no guides available, what do you do? That's a bit of an iffy situation because you only have 2 options that I personally can think about. You either go to a public coach or a pro player that has a smaller following, so he will actually interact with you, and ask him about the said subject. But just like with YouTube guide advice, you shouldn't take what one pro player or coach tells you as a gospel. Go ahead and ask another, and another. And if the information is consistent, great, you have a starting point. After you have the information, you're not gonna apply it. No, not yet. Make a hypothesis. No matter how you got the information, you still need to think critically. Critical thinking in a nutshell means that you need to think for yourself. Go ahead and make your own hypothesis. Why they've said a certain thing is done in a certain way. At first you might have no idea, you literally won't be able to make your analysis, but doing it over and over again will improve your analytical skills, and guess what? You will eventually be able to spot things in the information that you've received that are either incomplete or maybe even straight up wrong. And that's when you add in your little hypothesis about how a certain subject should be executed. Of course, sometimes the information you find is good too. And if that's the case, you still want to draw your own conclusions. Try to adapt the found knowledge to something that fits you a little bit better, something that works more for you. Valorant as a game is very dynamic, so you cannot restrict yourself to playing only one way. Even if a coach or a guide told you that this is the optimal way to play the game, you still need to be dynamic, be adaptable in what you do, and create your own way of playing the game. No pro plays the same, for example. You can watch Scream, he plays completely different from TenZ, which plays completely different from CNED. The list goes on. They are all great players, all top tier. But by their own use of critical thinking, they've developed their own system to play the game. They've created their own style, their own vision of the game, you can say. There are no absolutes in Valorant. There are only players that have their own conclusion and their own way to play the game, and then they stack up against each other. Which brings me to my next point. Comparing. After you're done with researching and making your own hypothesis, you want to compare them and see how they stack up against each other. Try to apply both in-game. At first you will likely only benefit from researched information, as long as you also verify the information source, and that's fine. But as you grow in skill and your analytical skill also grows, you will begin to get a lot more benefits from your conclusions and analysis rather than what a guide or a coach said. I'll ask you a simple question. How do you think a pro player improves? Someone that's already at the top and guides don't offer him value anymore. Do they follow their own hypothesis? Do they follow what the coach tells them? Or do they do something entirely different? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. If you've made it this far, you might or might not guess what I'm about to say. Take this video as your first example to help you learn critical thinking. Rewatch it, question it, see if you find any flaws, any inconsistent information, and then go ahead. Find more content that talks about critical thinking and apply the same process. Critical thinking is a huge subject that isn't limited to Valorant, so don't worry, there is a ton of content out there that you can search for. Apply your process, create your own way to think critically about any subject, and find out what works for you, not what works for someone else. Thank you for watching, have a wonderful day.